The new president of Sierra Leone talks candidly about the challenges facing his country and his plans for the future. And the president of Cameroon is waiting to learn if he'll win a 7th term in office. He's one of Africa's longest-serving leaders. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. It could be 2 weeks before we know the outcome of Cameroon's presidential election. Longtime President Paul Biya, who's been in power for 36 years, was challenged by 8 candidates in last Sunday's election. Ahead, we'll discuss some of Cameroon's challenges. But first, we turn to Sierra Leone. The country's new president, Julius Maada Bio, recently traveled to the United States to attend the United Nations General Assembly. He's made big promises, including free education and tackling corruption. In an interview with my colleague Jessica Stone, the Sierra Leone president discussed a range of issues, including his country's relationship with China.
Well, China is a long-standing friend of the Republic of Sierra Leone, and once I won the election, I was invited for a state trip, and of course, it's coincided with FOCAC. So we had a lot of discussions, bilateral discussions, and also discussed multilateralism. And we had a lot of understanding of key projects within the country regarding the bridge, regarding water supply to Sierra Leone, and other infrastructure projects. Were they conversations or agreements to build or to cooperate in some way on those? To build and to cooperate. We are in advanced stages with some of the projects to build, and in other areas to cooperate, especially when it comes to international trade, making sure that we open our borders so that we can have bilateral trade with the People's Republic of China. We also have key projects like the bridge between our international airport and the city, and we are looking at that. A few proposals have been presented already. Talk to me a little bit about the election that you just won, and congratulations. Voters had to consider their view of the relationship between Sierra Leone and China during that election, and you were critical of the former president's relationship with China. I wonder what you believe your victory signals about the relationship between Sierra Leone and China, and how you would characterize it now. We are a developing nation, and we look forward to nations that want to help us develop. We have a lot of traditional friends, like the United Kingdom, the United States. We have multilateral engagements with the World Bank, EU, several other groups already. But we also have a very strong relationship with the People's Republic of China. I wasn't critical of the relationship between Sierra Leone and China. I was very critical of a particular project and the way it was shrouded in secrecy in terms of the agreement and the benefit to the people of Sierra Leone. That is the Mamama Airport. It was signed on the eve of election. Nobody was involved in it. It didn't go to Parliament. And so we haven't really looked at the cost-benefit, done the cost-benefit analysis. I was very much opposed to it and still remain opposed to it. In fact, I have cancelled that particular project. If we have to do it, it has to be renegotiated. And we want to make sure it is a win-win agreement or project. One of the things that you've endured is the Ebola outbreak. There's been a slump in commodity prices. There are challenges in your efforts to renew the economy there. What specifically are you doing to address these issues and help the country grow? We inherited a very difficult economic situation indeed, but with some discipline, we have been able to stabilize the situation. Corruption, definitely, I have described as a threat, a national threat. And we have started the process of first reducing or taking off impunity, corruption with impunity. That is when public officials think that they can steal or do anything that is corruption, and that at the end of it all, nothing will come out of it. So we have established a judicial inquiry, which will soon start, And that is going to send a strong signal. Others have described it as a witch hunt, but what I really want to do is to tell people that you cannot just take from the coffers of the state without some accountability. This is democratic accountability. Monies that are meant for the people must reach or benefit the people. So once we take them on this one, the people we know now that corruption is not free. You must account for it someday. That is, we are reducing the impunity. We have also strengthened the Anti-Corruption Commission. We have changed the leadership, and we've given them the independence to go after people, including my own government and myself seated here, on any situation that they find to be a corrupt practice.
So you've been willing to open your own government to the same laws that you're applying to everyone else?
Correct.
Talk to me a little bit more about some of the lessons that you think that the country and its people should draw out of the Ebola epidemic. One of the things that I noticed from the research about that time in the country's history is that citizens not just were fearful about a health crisis, they began to distrust their government. How are you working to repair that trust, to re-earn that trust?
There is definitely a trust deficit in Sierra Leone, like most other countries in the world, where the people become so critical, so distrustful of the government. And that emanated from the fact that when there was an eruption of the Ebola virus, they didn't take it seriously. In fact, they said it wasn't on. So I think we have to open our doors. We have to let the public know what is happening. We have made serious pledges to the nation, and we are keeping those so they know that when you say something, you do it, and then they will trust you in future. When you say there is Ebola here, everybody should be careful, people will be careful. But if you make it a habit of lying, and that was what was happening for the most part. So even when people were told there was Ebola, they said, no, this is not a government that we can trust. They've been involved in telling us lies for a very long time. So I have made pledges, and I'm fulfilling those pledges one after the other, even without international financial support. That is going to reestablish some amount of trust and confidence between the people and the government.
Obviously, China was a big donor to the effort to fight Ebola in West Africa. Are there ways that you are partnering now with China in terms of improving the healthcare infrastructure of the country?
2 months ago, I actually launched commissioned a facility, a diagnostic facility for tropical diseases that was built by China in Freetown. But besides China, the United States, the whole world came to our support. The British were there physically, not just sending. The British were there, the Americans were there, the UN, the regions, different countries actually came to our aid at that time. But if you're asking about the Chinese in particular, that is the most recent, and we still have Chinese personnel around the country that are helping us to actually strengthen our health delivery system so that we can cope with situations of that nature should they arise in future.
I want to talk a little bit more about investment. There's always been a dependence on foreign aid in Sierra Leone. How do you plan to bring the country's economy to a place where it doesn't need that anymore?
That is a daunting task, but it's a task that we must take on as a nation. What we have done in the past 5 months is actually a precursor, a demonstration of the fact that we can actually do it if we discipline ourselves. Efficient political and economic management of the state and the resources. Now we have already launched a free education for pre-primary, from pre-primary to end of high school.
How are you paying for that?
From the local resources.
So selling of natural resources is going directly into the education system?
We have done, we have revamped the domestic revenue collection system. We have also reduced expenditure, and we are making sure that corruption is on the check. So within 5 months, we have launched successfully, and we are paying for all kids to go to school. And we have not received a cent, as I speak to you, from our donor, because we had already run out of the program with the IMF before we took over. We are negotiating with the IMF to restart the program, but until then, nothing has come in. So, but because we are committed and we must show our own dedication and commitment to that particular issue, which I think is important, because you are talking about resources, and most times when people talk about resources in Sierra Leone, they're thinking about the diamond, the gold, and everything, the ore. But for me, the most important resource is myself sitting here and my compatriots all around the world and in Sierra Leone. If we can develop the human capital, the human resource, that is through quality education, we can make Sierra Leone better. Other countries have become rich, not through mineral resources, but the human resource. So in as much as we have quite a lot of those, and we are trying to establish proper control and management of those, what we really want to do now is the human resource base of our country through quality, free education for everybody in Sierra Leone.
I want to ask you about climate change. Under the previous government, the unprecedented logging was approved, and you've stated that the sale of timber is only of that previously cut down. What measures are you putting in place now to address the deforestation that's taken place?
I think less than 2 months ago, also we launched the reforestation with the Ministry of Agriculture. We've started replanting. We've made it a campaign to make sure that we replant all around the country. But besides, even the harvesting of the logs, what I have said is that, yes, this should continue, but on a sustainable basis. We should not be just cutting the logs and sending them out. We can add value to the log and before they are exported. So now we want to look at the manufacturing of furniture and also adding value. But we do so on a sustained basis. And part of the monies that are paid is actually meant for us to replant on a very wide basis around the country.
Your critics say you're further dividing the country by going after the former president. If you want the country to move forward on a political level, do you need to reach out to your opposition?
We've reached out to them. I even came with some of them on this trip to the United Nations. I have not been after the president. We are fighting corruption. If you are corrupt, then you will be in our way. But besides that, no. We are talking to everybody. We need a united Sierra Leone, and we have committed ourselves to doing that. But again, I have said corruption is a threat to national security. If we leave it unchecked, everything I've spoken here will go in vain, and corruption makes investment very expensive. It is a turn-off for a lot of people. Just asking for $100 or $200, we turn off billions of dollars away from Sierra Leone. We want to say Sierra Leone is ready for business. One of the greatest impediments to that, which is corruption, which has always frustrated serious investors. We are taking on the fight. It's a fight we must fight, and it's a fight we are going to win.
That was Sierra Leone's new president, Julius Maada Bio. Next, corruption is also a big issue for the West African country of Cameroon. We'll discuss the presidential election when we come back. Stay with us, you're watching The Heat.